Back on TYT Sports with one more clip with Dalton Del Don via Yahoo Sports. And, of course, one of the Rotowire podcasts, the East Coast Offense. Once again, in the description box below, you can find all of that good stuff. I know you guys read the descriptions because people comment when I spell anything wrong. So apologies for the grammar errors occasionally. Spell check is not the way to go all the time. Regardless, it's time to talk about Fox Sports 1 and ESPN. So you guys are watching TYT Sports if you're watching this clip, a digital media platform where you can come for sports news and commentary. Dalton writes for Yahoo Sports, one of the obvious leaders in sports writing. A website I've been following for a long, long time, especially guys like Dan Wetzel and Tim Brown, as I was telling them before the clip started. What's interesting about the ESPN and Fox Sports 1 stories that have been running via websites like the Deadspins of the world and Uproxxs of the world is that Skip Bayless left ESPN and has gone to Fox Sports 1 and is winning the ratings war. Now, it's almost a double-edged, I shouldn't say double-edged sword, it's almost a gray area when it comes to ratings because a lot of people know at this point that the Nielsen ratings aren't the most trustworthy rating systems. There's a lot of times where one panelist accounts for 3,000 viewers in a sample test area, which is a rather large amount. And the joke, of course, from Anchorman is, you know those ratings don't account for families with more than one TV set in their home, which is somewhat true from Vince Vaughn's character. Wes Mantooth, Dorothy Mantooth, is a saint. You can add that reference in, too. So basically what's happened is since Skip Bayless has left ESPN, there have been numbers reported, such as the former ESPNers new series, which they refer to in the article, which I find hilarious as Second Take, has produced a 358% overall time slot increase in its first month versus the same calendar last year. If you want to see actual numbers, it's between 87,000 versus 19,000. Since Second Take came on the air, the herd is up 60% against last year. That's Colin Cowherd's show, so they're saying because of Skip Bayless, the ratings have gone up for Colin Cowherd. So 60%. Speaking of ESPN2, Skip's old show is down 28% since the launch. That's including Max Kellerman and still Stephen A. Smith. And ESPN2 is seeing declines in its key talk shows, First Take and His and Hers. I don't think this has as much to do with Skip Bayless as it has to do with the continuing trend that people go online for a lot of their content. I still watch ESPN. I still watch Fox Sports. When people ask me that, they go, oh, why? Like, or at least people go, like the younger people will go, well, why do you watch those? Well, because guess what? The San Francisco Giants were playing postseason baseball. That was on Fox Sports. I needed to watch it there. Live highlights themselves, I'm a big fan of Scott Van Pelt. I don't hide that, so I watch SportsCenter at night. But when it comes to the overall umbrella of sports highlights, you can go to Yahoo Sports. You can go to NFL.com. You can go to NBA.com. There's other places that have that outlet, which used to be a cornered market for the ESPNs of the world. I'm curious, from Dalton's perspective, as a very successful writer for Yahoo Sports, and I believe many other publications, I think before Rotowire at one point, right? I'm curious your thoughts on this whole ratings war and if it's overplayed in the first place.
Yeah, I don't pay a ton of attention to it, and I don't know how big of a hot take this will be, but I've never really watched First Take. PTI, I still watch. I think it's a pretty good show. I don't know, just the whole screaming back and forth at each other. It just seemed a lot of it is just made up in order to. I don't even believe half the time people like Bayless believe in what they're saying, frankly. So that I don't know. It just seems there's some sort of fakeness to it to me. But obviously, I'm in the minority if they're getting such great ratings. But I just personally don't really watch it. So I don't know what to make of it. It is interesting and it is surprising that leaving ESPN and he's winning this ratings war. I will say that I didn't expect that.
Well, my biggest question really for you, Dalton, is because, we grew up in pretty much similar generations here, but there was a point where you only watched, not you specifically, but the world only watched SportsCenter. It was program viewing. Right. And by the way, I have to separate SportsCenter from ESPN entirely because ESPN.com, I think, is still the #1 destination for sports. I would be shocked if the Alexa rank was lower than number 1 or 2, right, in terms of their website. And of course, there's a lot of sites that obviously will compete with that, but SportsCenter used to be programmed viewing. Dan Patrick, who was one of the hosts on SportsCenter before he did the Dan Patrick Show and left for NBC Sports and the Football Night in America, all that stuff that happened later in his career, was saying recently that he sees one of the biggest problems as it used to be programmed viewing, hence why they brought a Scott Van Pelt at night type of thing, because it used to be you would wait for certain hosts to come on. So I'm sure you grew up watching SportsCenter. I'd be shocked if you told me right now that, nope, I never watched anything when it came to the Obermans and Stuart Scotts of the world.
Absolutely. Of course I used to, but part of the problem isn't even their fault. It's just the advent of the internet and the smartphones. I mean, I used to, I'm not, as you said, same generation, but I used to at one point score my fantasy football with the USA Today newspaper that would come not even Monday mornings.
You're in a little bit of an older generation.
Well,
I am blessed. I've never had to use a box score to score my teams.
Yeah. So I mean, I did start young. Let's put it that way. I was in the 7th grade when I was doing this. So,
okay.
But I'm 34 years old, so I'm not. It is crazy that it's come so far and so different. I think that is obviously part of the problem with, say, just the format of SportsCenter, that everyone knows the outcome already. So you do need these bigger than life personalities to bring you in. I love what Scott Van Pelt is doing on that late SportsCenter. By the way, he's really doing a terrific job, and it's must watch, frankly. So yes, I used to watch SportsCenter all the time. I don't know if the product is part of the problem that it's dropped, but I think fundamentally it's just the way the world has changed. And with your smartphone now, there's so many different options as well too. I mean, those old shows, the Dukes of Hazzard or whatever, their share would be like 30 million people would watch that show. It wasn't because it was good; it was terrible.
It was only show on TV.
There were only 2 other options,
right?
I mean, that's the thing. Like Breaking Bad, one of the best shows ever, it get like 2 million people watch it because there's just 1,000 shows and Netflix and all that, 1,000 channels. Everything is totally different. So in how we grade and how we consume and how we look at these numbers, it's just contextually totally different.
Right. That's also one of the big things that the article pointed out. I think it was Kevin Draper who wrote it for Deadspin. He actually wrote 2. He actually did a follow-up. A follow-up? That's like true journalism. I haven't seen that in a long time. But in general, one of the things, like a lot of people like to play the ratings game because it gives them some kind of context of how many people sometimes people confuse caring and watching because there's a big difference in how many people are engaging. And now they have such a thing with social media. Like you mentioned Breaking Bad. While 2 million people were watching, or 3-4 million maybe for the series finale of Breaking Bad, I remember that show very specifically not having a large following until season 3 because it went to Netflix and then people started catching up and then they were like, oh, now I must watch this by appointment viewing. Yep. And to think that there's 5 shows remaining in this world that people will have appointment viewing for. I consider like Sunday Night Football appointment viewing. People seem to be watching that a lot. Game of Thrones is appointment viewing. Yeah. Mad Men seem to be appointment viewing. The Sopranos used to be. There is none anymore. If you want content, which is, by the way, like we put up about, I think 3-4 clips a day on the TYT Sports channel here. Our network puts up a ton of clips a day, and people just want more, which makes sense because there's such a high demand for content that we have no choice but to give it to them, which is also a big part of how like these ratings games affect digital media in its entirety. And as someone who works, again, in digital media, Yahoo Sports is digital media, it's an interesting two-way street when it comes to figuring out ratings, because a lot of the time...
Yeah, and like Netflix will release a series all at once. Narcos and Stranger Things, they all came out literally at once.
Yeah, and if you hadn't watched it in the first 2 weeks, word of mouth will tell you how popular a show is. You can tell if a show's doing really well if people keep saying, oh, I haven't watched a single thing about it, but I just watched their main host on Jimmy Fallon. And then you go, okay, now I need to catch up. I've always found the ratings game interesting. I found it to be sometimes unfairly contextually in an unfair way, but in the end, it does give you some scope of what's going on. And in this case, it seems like a meaningless war that Fox Sports is winning, I guess, is your outcome.
Is there some part of it, like the famous thing with the Howard Stern, it's, like more, 30% of people listen to him because they love him, and more than half listen because they hate him. I mean, is there something like that kind of going on with the hot take situation with these two hosts yelling at each other?
I've always thought that when it came to the Skip Bayless audience. I give Skip Bayless a lot of credit as someone who's far more successful than me and obviously knows what he's doing. So I understand that. Do I think his product for sports in general is the greatest of all time? No. But again, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything and say I'm better than Skip Bayless. I'm not at this point in my life. Maybe one day. But in terms of it, I think that's a great way to put it. I was a big fan of Howard Stern. I still am. But I do believe that half his audience, if not more, want to hear him say something so ridiculous, want him to probe into a question that is so over the top or unfair that, or in the politically correct world out there, have people like hate watch. I mean, you can see that from Facebook views across other platforms I won't mention because I don't like to get too political on the platform, but when it comes to it, like you'll watch like, oh, that person has 20 million views on every one of her videos, and I think a lot of people are hate watching, which is a thing. Hate watching is a thing. I hope people don't hate watch us. That's not cool. Like, but if you do, be creative in the comments. You know, that's the best part. All interesting. But Dalton, thank you so much for joining me on the show. These clips all go up at like sporadic points, so I could be, outroing you on a clip that goes up before another clip. Regardless, those who are watching how we shot this chronologically, this is the last clip we're doing of the day with Dalton. Very important stuff in the description box below, at Dalton Del Don on Twitter. You can find him on Yahoo Sports with weekly fantasy football articles. You can find him on not just, he is on multiple podcasts, one Fantasy Freak Show with Brad Evans, another great Yahoo Sports writer, another guy I got to meet actually in Vegas, a part of a great trip. Make sure to check those all out. These guys know what they're talking about. They have 13 fantasy football teams, all of which are better than any of my 3 fantasy football teams. I am a combined, I think 3-12 on the season. Wow, something like that, 3-15. It's not a good year for fantasy football in my life. Dalton, once again, thank you so much. Comment below. We'll see you next time.